Talk to me then about kind of your role and when you joined Southwestern Rail and got introduced to
Yeah.
CoreStream, what were you thinking?
So I manage the contractual relationship between SWR and the Department for Transport. So that is making sure we comply with all our obligations under any agreement we've got with them. And yeah, making sure that we're effectively doing what we're asked of taxpayers' money. When I joined SWR, we were still under private ownership, so we had a really like hundreds of pages long contract with the department, what we could do, what we couldn't do, what we had to deliver, all that kind of stuff. And actually, what I found when I joined, and the team had been here before me, had done an excellent job of setting us up on CoreStream. So all the obligations we had were kind of stored neatly. You know, you could see evidence that we'd submitted against them. You could see where we'd kind of had derogations or changes. And you could really just easily pick out one obligation, know who in the business was responsible for it, where it got up to, and just kind of and go from there. So there were no surprises, and that came in really handy as we were being nationalised, because as part of that process, we had to sort of make sure we were going through our contract, make sure we were following all the right clauses in there, and make sure we'd done everything we'd been told to do. Um, and then we moved over to our new contract once we'd been nationalised, and uh, we found before we put the new contract on CoreStream, which we did about a month after, it was an absolute nightmare because we were just basically going back to using Excel and pen and paper and just trying to make sure nothing got dropped. Um, but then, we had a bit of time and we got the contract onto CoreStream. And actually, since then, again, everything's run really well. It's great for us as a compliance team because it takes a lot of the kind of admin heavy stuff out of our job. We don't have to chase people or remind people what our obligations are because CoreStream does that for us, and people have always got that record. And actually, what we find, particularly every kind of after every rail period when we have to do reporting on against all our obligations, a lot of the business now can just self-serve. They go on CoreStream themselves, put an update in themselves. So it takes a lot of kind of uh, admin heavy, non-value add part of our job away, which is really helpful.
That's so great to hear. So essentially, the kind of like organizational piece of being able to
Mm,
get that holistic overview and then drill down into it
mm.
from a reporting standpoint, what does that look like?
What we find helpful on there is that we can kind of mark obligations as complete when they're done, and then each period we can kind of make sure we've then got a nice kind of visual representation of how we're doing against things. So it can spit out kind of a bar chart or a pie chart that kind of says, what proportion of your obligations have you completed, what proportion are kind of green rag rated, so are on track, which ones are at risk, and you can do that quite quickly, and it's quite a good visual for me anyway. It's quite a good visual kind of presentation of that to my kind of directors. And I can just say, look, we are doing really well against against what we're meant to be delivering. Look at this pie chart, we're on track without them having to sort of scroll through a spreadsheet or a table that has, greens and reds and ambers in it.
In regards to the different teams,
Yeah.
so could you talk to me a bit about the functions your team, any wider teams that are leveraging it?
Yeah, so we use it for sort of obligation monitoring and compliance purposes. So, for instance, in all our obligations, we've got kind of clear owners, clear kind of responsible directors, a description of the obligation, our interpretation of it, all the deadlines. So, if an obligation is kind of every period, you can set that up to be like that.
Mhm.
Or if it's a one-off date, you can set it up like that, which is really helpful. And effectively, what we then use that to do is every period, the kind of business owner of it puts their update in onto that system, and then we can quite easily export those updates into kind of quite an easy to read document. Um, so again, it takes the legwork out of it for us, because it just allows people to kind of do their updates as and when they can, and then we can kind of print it off at the end of the week.
So, how many owners, how many
Hmm.
people do you think are being affected by this tool?
Oh, I would say probably if you added up the exec directors and the sort of obligation owners, my team, you're probably looking at about 50 to 60 people across the business.
Mm. Lovely. Logging in. And I'm assuming some of them aren't logging in every day, so you need it to be
No,
intuitive. Yeah.
yeah, no. A lot of them are logging in as and when, once a period to update us on their kind of obligations. But we've never, not since I've been here, we've never had an issue with anyone sort of logging in and going, oh my God, what do I do? I can't work this out. People do seem to, we send them kind of a very basic guide, but beyond that, people do seem to work out for themselves, which I think is testament to the system. I've never had um formal training on it. I was given a short guide when I started and I just worked it out from then. Yeah,
Really
it's
nice.
a good system. It makes sense.
From a customer support perspective,
Mm.
how's that been?
Yeah, absolutely fine. Alice and my team has primarily dealt with any issues we've had, but we've not actually had any technical issues or anything like that. The time we've sort of dealt with your customer support is mostly around kind of changing and adapting the system to us. So adding sort of a little bit more functionality or taking a bit of functionality away. So it feels like quite an adaptable system. Um, and again, once we sort of set out what we wanted the system to do, it was quite a quick process, and just kind of adapted to our needs, which was really helpful.
When, in regards to those like changes, upgrades, what are the
Mm.
kind of key things that happen there?
So, because we've still got a lot our old contract on that system, effectively one of the upgrades was to almost split the old contract away from the new contract. So, the old contract is kind of hidden in a separate repository, which we can access and use when we need. But it just means you're not battling through, the thousands of obligations from that contract whilst also looking at the current contract, which is really, really helpful. It's much more intuitive for people because they come in on the page and see the current contracts. It's still easy to find the old contracts if you wanted it. And then the other functionality was just removing the reminder functionality for directors on some of the obligations because, like I said, some of them have hundreds, and they're very much kind of BAU obligations. So it was helpful to kind of turn that off, just to stop their inboxes getting deluged, really.
That's it. I spoke to pets at home recently, and they had the exact same thing. Because I asked, like,
Yeah,
what advice would you give to someone setting up a new system? They're like, don't go notification heavy because you're gonna
yeah.
be burnt by that.
Yeah, it just means people stop reading them, and that's not what you want. You
Yeah,
want people to read them if they're getting the notifications.
love that. Um, if you had to describe CoreStream in 3 words, what would they be?
Oh, okay. Um,
Really challenging you here.
yeah, I'd say intuitive because it's quite an
Mhm.
easy system to work out. Um, I'd say precise. Everything has a home in there. Um, Intuitive, precise, and probably say responsive because of the changes we've been able to make to it. It's not just been a sort of drag and drop system where we have to use everything in it or can't change things. We have been able to change things, which has been really helpful for us. So maybe adaptive would
Mm.
be a better word for that bit.
Okay. Um, how would you summarize the value of CoreStream to Southwestern Rail?
Um, I think it's about organization. I think making sure everything's in one place, making sure there's that repository. I mean, particularly in terms of my team, when people move on or new people come in, it's got that kind of real clear record of how where things are up to, kind of what the next steps are. I'd say um I guess also efficiency as well. It's meant we've been able to move away from kind of laborious spreadsheets and pen and paper effectively, to a more kind of integrated system where people know what they're doing each month. And that's probably, I think, saved, it probably saves kind of at least one FTE in my team from just having to manage that kind of repository because it's kind of all done centrally. I think as well it gives us a really clear kind of, I guess, for business continuity purposes, we're not because we're not messing around with spreadsheets and multiple records. We've kind of got, and it's all, I know it's all backed up in like lots of different places on your end. We've kind of got that clear record. And so if we ever did have a real catastrophic IT failure, we'd be able to just open up CoreStream and it would still be all there. We wouldn't lose any value, as it were.
That's so interesting. No one's ever said that to me. That's such a good
Yeah,
point.
yeah.
The data's safe.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, when I first started in kind of this role in another organization, we had this ridiculous spreadsheet which was you had it all on, and you were always petrified that you'd end up deleting something off it, because it was all in that one place, and so it was a nightmare. But this, it's idiot proof, if you know what I mean. No one can go on there and mess with it and move things around.
Oh my God, I'm so using that quote. That's great.
I think when you're because we've got so many business owners who own obligations, there's always that worry when you give people access to something that they're gonna break it. Um,
Mm.
but we know that's not going to happen with this system, so it's really helpful.
So it's peace of mind.
Yeah, and because otherwise we'd probably end up doing it all manually, my team, just to make sure that everything was safe and secure. But we've got that confidence that we can almost crowdsource it out to the business.
Lovely.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I don't know from your perspective with Southwestern Rail, because obviously it's changed from private to being nationalised again.
Mm.
How does this program or the wider GRC program tie into your business objectives, values, what the senior leadership team want, anything like that?
I guess I guess it ties in a kind of risk management way more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's risk management and efficiency for us.
Mm-hmm.
It means we're reducing, I guess, the amount of taxpayer support we need because I'm not having to kind of have a whole team of people messing around with spreadsheets all day. Um, and also it allows us to clearly track our obligations and make sure they don't get forgotten about. Um, so I guess, that quite effectively mitigates one of our big governance risks, but stuff gets lost in the business, as it were.
And then advice. What advice would you give to professionals who are looking at a system for something like this?
Um, make sure you're getting a system that can be adapted and is easy to use. Make sure you're not getting something that only you and a select couple of others can use, because otherwise you're baking in inefficiency for quite a long time. And with all these systems, there is an upfront time cost of getting it set up properly. But then after that, you want it to be something that people can use. You don't want to be having to give people, day-long training on how to use a system every time a new business owner kind of joins. So, make sure you get something that can adapt to what you need and that people across the business can actually use.
Lovely.
So yeah, no, it's a good system. So yeah, happy to help you guys advertise it.
Thank you.